Hi, this is Richard from animate.com and we're looking at the lens compositor node for Blender. It's an add-on which generates lens flares based on the render passes of your rendered frame. It will take the emission and the glossiness pass and generate lens flares based on each pixel of your rendering. So unlike many other lens flare plugins, you won't have to animate a position for your lamp and an intensity of how bright that lamp point is. But it also allows you to generate lens flares from bright areas, like glossy reflections. So let's have a look on how to use this node group. Inside Blender, we can open the sample file which you downloaded once you purchased the product. Here we have a sample scene which already uses the node group to generate lens flares. And most importantly, we should notice the way we connect the passes into the input of the node group. There are two different node groups, one for spherical lenses and one for anamorphic lenses, which look slightly different. But both have the same way to input the emission pass and the glossy pass. To get a colored image of your glossiness, you can use the glossy direct light pass and the glossy color pass and multiply both with a mix RGB node. It's already done here, and the output will be the colored reflections of your rendered frame. So we use these colored reflections of the rendered frame to put it into the glossy input of the node group. And the emission pass can be plugged right into the emit input of the node group. If you don't use the glossy pass, then you can leave here a black color. Be sure that all values of RGB will be 0, 0, 0. The same goes for the emission pass. If you don't use a pass, just be sure to use a black color instead. That would be the case if I just want to generate lens flares using the glossiness, of course. If you want to generate lens flares on a ready rendered sequence and you don't have the glossy or emission passes, then you could use the original frame and just use a color-corrected copy of that to generate something like an emission pass. For example, you could use a color ramp to make something like a high-pass filter from the original rendered image, where only the brightest areas will be multiplied onto the image so that you will result in a mainly black image which only preserves the bright areas. And use this as emission input for the node group. Of course, the image, the original image, shall still be used in the image input. So how to use the parameters of this node group. To see the effect of each group, I will first of all set the intensity of several effects down to 0 so that we only see one of the effects, which now is the ghosts. Ghosts are the reflection of light within the lens system. So if we want a very reflective lens system, then we crank this intensity up to 1, but it of course will look quite unnatural or unphysical. It will look like the reflections generate more light than the image itself, than the light entering the lens system itself. So I would keep that down under a value of 0.2. Then we have a ghost aspect, which especially for anamorph lenses is very interesting. It will stretch the reflections horizontally, which already will make something like streaks. Sorry, I forgot to level down the streaks. So if we generate ghosts, visible ghosts here, and we change the aspect ratio, then we will see how the generated ghost will have a different behavior based on the stretching of the proportions. Very high values will lead to a big blur, so let's try something around 10 to get a stretched reflected copy of the bright pixels. The ghost blur will drive how sharp or blurred your ghosts, your reflections are. So I recommend using a value of 4 so that it will only resemble the bigger details of the image and not every single glossy light. If you want to simulate a coating of your lens system, then you could use the ghost tint factor and choose the color of your coating in this color selector. The next category is the streaks. I will cancel the ghosts now and I will crank up the streaks. Streaks are generated the same way as ghosts. They are a reflection between the lenses in the lens system, but they appear in anamorphic lenses because each reflection will be stretched horizontally. And this will generate a very, very wide horizontal blur of bright pixels, of bright light sources. So we see that the bright areas of these letters have stretched out horizontal streaks in a certain color. Of course, if we change the color, then the streak effect will change with it. The next one is my favorite effect of this node group. It's the iris, which is generating a crown rainbow stripy effect around the bright areas. Of course, these circles squeezed and centered in the image. You can change the scale of these. If you have the feeling that the circles are too small and too present in the image, then I would just scale them up before I would decrease the intensity of the iris. And how much they are squeezed on horizontally can be set in the iris aspect parameter. If you want to tint these, then you can do so by using the iris tint factor and choose a color in the color selector. Diffractions can be seen when pixels, bright pixels, are entering the edge area of your frame. So if bright areas touch the edge of the frame, then those diffracting bright areas will flash up. Of course, this will look much more convenient if something is entering or leaving the frame than rather stay statically at the edge. For such a case, if it's just standing there, if the camera isn't moving and the bright area isn't moving, then I wouldn't use diffraction. But it has a very strong dynamic visual effect if bright areas are moving and they are entering the frame and leaving the frame again. And last but not least, we have several different glow effects, one of which is the star we see right here. It's just using 3 different axes or 6 different directions from the bright area and have some chromatic variation in them. They look a little bit like rainbow. Then we have a halo, which is a very wide blur effect around the bright areas. And we can set the size of this glow effect here in the next parameter. And the dust glow simulates dust particles based on the lens. And the dust glow simulates dust particles which sit on the glass of your lens. So if light hits on them, they produce a bright spot in the image. We now use the bright areas of the image, blur it a lot and look if they are hitting some dust particles which we generated over the frame, over the rendered frame, and if so, then at that area a bright blurred spot will appear. So if we combine all these effects, we will end up with a very complex and highly dynamic lens flare effect. I hope this short introduction was helpful for you, especially to choose if or if not to purchase this item, or if you have purchased it and had some troubles getting into it and getting started, that you now have a better view, a better impression on how to use it and when to use it. If you have any questions, please send me an email or write a comment in the comment section. and I'm looking forward to hear from you. That's it. Happy blending. Bye.